to Psychopath in Your Life. This is episode number 84, and I'm your host, Dianne Emerson. I'm the author of the book, Psychopaths in Our Lives, My Interviews. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about the eyes of the psychopaths. And there's a specific reason for this, because we have to look for clues where we can, because most of these people will never get a diagnosis. So one of the symptom areas to look for are the eyes. And over the years, a lot of things were said by victims as far as this dark, scary eye and evil and reptilian smile. And also, if you've read any true crime books, you will read about the victims that escaped, of course. They will be talking about the how this mask just dropped and all of a sudden they were looking at a whole different person. So we're really talking about the mask which covers the eyes and keeps us from seeing behind that mask. So your more sophisticated psychopaths are going to be able to hold that mask on tighter, and it'll take something disrupting them to have that mask slip, and that's where we get into the eyes. So given the opportunity to talk to a few psychopaths about it in my book, I thought, well, this is a good thing to explore because of what I heard from the victims for all these years, and then what my questions were as far as in relationship to the eyes. So it's really a fascinating thing because the eyes say a lot about us, and we can start to draw the connection between the eyes and the mask. And the reason for this is because, along with gaslighting, which I covered in the last episode, is the eyes are another very big signal. And with gaslighting and the eyes, keep in mind, we're talking about from what the victim is going to see here. And they're going to see those eyes, and they're going to also experience the gaslighting. So I thought maybe we should put some of this into perspective, and then in the next few episodes I'll continue on with how we got to where we are as far as the McCann case, the abuse of children, how our thinking got so distorted. So today let's just focus in on the eyes. And I'd like to quote and my favorite author, Jane Eyre. There was the story Jane Eyre. The author was Charlotte Bronte. And the quote from that book that I really liked is, "The soul fortunately has an interpreter, often an unconscious, but still a faithful interpreter, in the eye." Now that really says a lot, because over the years, victims would, after they would make these comments about having seen this dark, scary eye, they would sort of start to backpedal it with excuses and rationalizations about that. And so it became something that I wanted to explore is, do the psychopaths themselves understand what their eyes even signify to the rest of us when we get that glimpse into those dark eyes? So their eyes can really distort our thoughts and our visions. And I've had this theory that I want to talk about for a long time, and it's also helps you to figure out who you're dealing with. So really this is another tool to have to take a look at people that you may be questioning in your life. Because like I said before, there's a big broad difference between a class A jerk and a psychopath. So it's important because you need to know how to be safe in your next step based on who you're dealing with. So that's where history and context comes in. So even if it's somebody you're thinking about in their past, I had this idea about the photos. And I started wondering, because it seemed that what I was hearing from people was that they felt that the eyes were used to express attraction, and also the eyes were used to lure people in, because the eye contact part of the equation became very significant. Remember, this is all pre-dropping the mask and the dark black eyes. So anyway, so people will say a lot of things. So let me give you a quote of what somebody talked about when they had discovered these black dark eyes, and that's what happens when the mask slips. This is how she described it. "The angry eyes. Oh, I know those well. Whenever he was angry, his eyes frightened me. I don't back down. I don't show fear. I'm not easily intimidated. Often with him, it was so to my own very detriment. His angry eyes would become very green and glass over. I've seen people compare Psychopath's eyes to those of a shark. I can testify to seeing that myself. I know when I see those angry eyes, the mean stare was something I always tried to alter to effect. Now I'm writing, I remember how he would often avoid looking at me. Or if he was wearing sunglasses, he wouldn't take them off when we fought. It was though he didn't want me to see his eyes. I learned to be afraid, intimidated, and to back down from those angry eyes. So that quote really sums up a lot, because the dark, angry eyes, the looking into evil, is an aspect that happens, and a lot of times it can be a victim's first red flag. In other words, you know something's off when you see those eyes. I've seen them myself a few times, and you don't really ever forget. So what'll happen is the first time a victim may be exposed to those eyes, there's a tendency to brush it off. Well, it was in the heat of the moment. He sort of looked angry, or she sort of looked angry, but let me diminish this. So that tends to be step 2, once the eyes are seen, would be to diminish the fact of what they saw. So I also wondered, how much do psychopaths know about their eyes? And do they understand the mask aspect of it? And because if something happens to upset a psychopath and the mask drops, you see it. You'll never forget it. It's kind of like looking into a scary black well and a feeling that evil is lurking. And those are some of the questions I wanted to ask these psychopaths. You know, did they tell people? Did people tell them anything about their eyes that they could report? And it was actually quite interesting, because they only knew how to report their eyes based on what people had told them. So over the years, so many victims had commented about the details of the eyes. So it always, the eye detail statements always came up over some sort of conflict. It was during this conflict that these black reptilian eyes came forward. So the mask, that we'll call it, is that's when it drops off, and that's when you see those eyes. So I was asking victims also about, I wondered about, because I'm always looking at pictures and stuff, I was wondering about how the eyes of psychopaths look in photography. In other words, are there any clues there? And remember, none of this is scientific, okay? I'm just telling you the process that I went through to come up with my conclusions. And I'm sharing them with you today. So I started thinking about this picture thing, because some of these people, now I don't know if it's because I already know they're psychopaths because they've been caught and it's a murder, and I'm looking at those eyes. I don't know if I'm shaded by that, but anyway, I've always wondered about the picture thing. So a lot of people started commenting about looking at pictures of the psychopaths and their eyes, and there is a disconnect there. And what when I was talking to the psychopaths as far as how they saw this mask thing, here's what one of them said. The difference is that we wear a mask not to hide our flaws, but to exploit yours. The person you need me to be in order to trust, confide in, support, and promote is the person I will become. Being free of unpredictable emotion, reactions, and guilt, I am free to be whatever, whenever, and then change that when necessary. So what he's saying is he's thinking that the mask is something that they're hiding from you, but really they hide from you behind the mask by their charming outwardly personalities. So here's where we get into the thing. They're going to look great, they're going to talk great, but you're not going to know until you see that mask slip. Another key clue here to look at as far as information. So I really don't know. I've yet to kind of figure out if it's anger to get the mask to drop. Is it frustration? Is it for intent? Is it maybe for effect? And so that was what really part of my thinking going into this as far as the eyes. And so I wondered if there was an association that when the gloves come off and the pupils of the eyes get huge and black, then I can tell you for sure, did it happen over conflict or by intent? So in most cases, less socialized psychopaths, they have a harder time controlling it, and they can go from 0 to full black eyes just like that, but we're really not talking about that kind of person here. So a really skilled psychopath will be aware of the mask dropping, but it'll be a long time before you'll get a glimpse into that because they're that good at keeping the mask on. So the eyes aren't something with a skilled psychopath that you're going to immediately think, ah, yeah, the eyes, that's it. It's going to be a whole part of the situation. So when I was asking these psychopaths if they understood people's emotions through their eyes, they felt like their eyes were a mirror, and the way people saw what they want to see and what they're feeling. So what he's saying here is that his eyes were like a mirror to people. And he commented that this would also help gain the confidence of the victim. See, the eyes are being used for a lot of things here. And intently, somebody really paying attention will show that with their eyes. And so we learn to look for eyes for symptoms and things. So when I asked them as far as, well, how can you change your behaviors using your eyes? And he came back and said, of course, I can do melty eyes, or wise, or deep, or regretful, or lively, whatever I want, really. So it became really clear to me that they're kind of aware of their eyes, but this is just of the three of them, but they did seem baffled by how it all worked. And one of them, when I was trying to explain to him, or he was telling me what he was seeing to the victim, and I was trying to explain how the victim saw this whole triangular thing here, he really got kind of snippy and said, well, next time this happens, I'll have to do it in front of a mirror so I can report better. So see, he really didn't know, so he was kind of grasping there. They know what people have said to them. So one of them said that he thought his eyes go gray when he's mad at someone. And I've heard a lot of descriptions from people over the years, from gray to reptilian to a lot of different descriptions. So he's also had people tell him that he's freaky scary when he's mad. And they also tell him that he stares at them like a robot that wants to kill them. But then he went on to claim that he's very good at maintaining his mask. I don't think he's as good as he thinks he is, but otherwise people wouldn't be making these comments about the killing robot look. So he went on to say that the whole idea is to get the mask so it can be forgotten about for days. And only something really truly, how he described this, unexpected and sudden, is likely to make as much a wobble in it. So they can be triggered by certain things, and that will make the mask start to come off. So, and then he also went on to say, which answered my previous question, he went on to say that he may choose to remove it for effect. Guess somebody really wants to scare you or something, that'd be a good way to start. And so there's a lot of conscious feelings and thoughts about what are going on with these psychopaths and their masks. And how they seem to know what's going on behind it, but not really the full thing other than what's being reported. So they don't really have any first-hand knowledge, just assumptions, okay? So I think the eyes become a complex situation from the very beginning for them. And they do tend to learn early on. It's quoted earlier, when I quoted earlier, the victim who talked about the psychopath in her life actually wearing sunglasses to keep the mask from being slipped. And he's probably, and I'm just guessing here, he's probably responding to victims in the past telling him that his eyes were scary. So he got the idea, maybe wear sunglasses. Wasn't there, I'm just guessing. So we have to ask ourselves, do our eyes lie to us, or do we lie to ourselves? Or do we see things in other people that we hope is true, but it may just not be? It could very well be an illusion, also known as a lie. And this is very much how a socialized psychopath is thinking. They know they have this mask, and they know they have it there, so it's like a tango going on. They don't really want the victim to know about them. They seem to all agree that the eyes were a giveaway, but the struggle was with keeping the mask on. And some of them had really learned because they had ideas about people commenting, and they also had things for which they did, which went really beyond the sunglasses thing. I'd rate that guy as probably a mid-level kind of a guy that just got one thing and just stuck with it when he put on the sunglasses, and overlooked the fact that wearing sunglasses kind of makes you look weird inside too. So if they encounter an explosive event, they will try to be able to, they'll try to maintain the mask, but that's when the going gets really tough. So one of them that I interviewed, this is about how they plan things. He was the one in the work environment, cute guy from the last show named Bill. And what he said, he will start to see himself start to go there, meaning the mask is starting to slip. And what he'll do is put himself in a self-imposed isolation within the office so that he can't be called out for this weird look in his eyes. So, over the years, people would also look back and say things like, you know, I brushed aside the first red flags. And probably that first red flag was when the mask dropped, because up until then, everything really seemed too good to be true, really. And then the first glimpses into these red flags, of course, they're going to get explained away. So if you bring up, you have these really scary eyes, which I believe these other victims, otherwise these psychopaths wouldn't be able to report what victims had told them. So I believe that they do hear this, but I just don't believe that they really know to what extent. But they do know the more higher level they are, like this Bill guy, he knows to go hide in another office. So this is another quote that I'll read, which I had asked for people's comments when I did an original recording on this, which reminds me, if you're looking to find out if you have a psychopath in your life, my podcast series up until episode 72 was just different things to consider to take a look at. And so when I talked about the photography and the eyes and stuff, a couple people sent me emails and commented on it. So here's one that I'll quote. It says, "Since I have determined that she has issues," yeah, I get that. That's probably true. "I have gone back and looked at the countless number of pictures we have taken over the years, and it's so clear that she only smiles with her teeth. The eyes never move." I heard this part a lot as far as the eyes and the mouth connection. Now remember, this is not anything scientific, just something to consider. The eyes are fully engaged and focused. Granted, I'm not an expert on this, but I read that there is a scientific reason for this. Do I know for sure? I can't say I do. But one thing I find most crazy when I look at pictures of her in a group, say 3 to 10 people, and look at everyone in the picture, all their eyes match with their smiles. And I look at her eyes, and it's downright haunting. Who knows? Maybe one day there will be a breakthrough in this research, and it will provide a tag so the rest of us can finally have a clue as to the monster inside and learn to avoid them because of the scarlet letter written all over their fake smiles and eyes. Would it be really cool if someday that could be added to a checklist? Yeah, I have to agree, because it seems subtle, but it's really not, and it is a key indicator to kind of separate them out here. So if they're hiding behind their masks, they're really hiding in plain sight to a large degree, because if you suspect, let's say your boss is a psychopath, you can look for some of these things that Bill talked about. You know, he edged out of the room, he put himself into self-isolation. Just start to watch some of their behaviors. So it's once they seem to identify what it is, and you can take a good look into those eyes, it's something you'll probably never forget. It's like those, when police talk about the smell of a dead body. Once you see into those black evil eyes, and unfortunately this is typically the last thing a victim will see, is those black unhinged eyes, because they don't typically drop the mask and commit things of a horrible extent if they're not in that moment and that darkness is taken over. So they say that I was curious about the victims talking about their eyes, and they seem to know there's something there, but what they're trying to wrangle with is how to control the mask, and how they're it's something so subtle. It's like gaslighting. It can happen just in a flicker that you get that black, and then they may be able to pull themselves back in and get that mask back on. So having those black, dark eyes isn't like it's going to happen for the next hour or two. I mean, it could be just that glimmer, that flash that you'll get. Here again, depends on how sophisticated they are. So they figured out a lot of ways to hide them, so we just need to figure out ways to watch for them. And are we going to be able to see? I don't know. What one of the psychopaths said, which was interesting about the eyes and the emotions, because remember in the bonding, the fishing for information phase, all that has to do with the eyes. Whether we like it or not, we're visual people. That's why we have eyes. God, I make such astute comments, don't I? So what he said was that this is what he thinks the rest of us see in the eyes. So this is interpreted through the eyes of a psychopath. And he says, people see emotions in people's eyes, and mine work like a mirror in the way people see what they want to see and what they're feeling. This also helps you control people. See, we get back to control here. Because they think I feel the same, and that makes them nicer. We wear a mask not to hide our flaws. Remember, they're also perfect, so hiding flaws is probably a misnomer. But we wear a mask not to hide our flaws, but to exploit yours. The person you need me to be in order to trust, confide in, support, and promote is the person I will become. So they always talk about how they're going to transform things. And this guy's brought this up a few times here. And they use through the eyes. And so while they're talking to you, they're using their eyes to draw you in, but they're also calculating your reaction by your eyes. So if they get to a point that's pushing your boundaries a little bit too far, they'll watch for any kind of like squinting or some sort of reaction to your eyes. So remember, this isn't, people will always try to excuse the behavior, and maybe somebody you're with that you're thinking is a psychopath, maybe they just did a couple of weird things. That's always an option. So we don't want to jump to the worst case scenario, but there is a lot that goes on with people minimizing behaviors. Once they've red flagged them, there is a real tendency to move in and minimize that, to say, I probably saw it wrong, and yeah, probably too much to drink here, or yeah, I am probably sensitive. So see how the gaslighting and the eye thing, excuse me, will all work together. So I will kind of get wrapping up here, and this is a woman who had written in about the psychopath in her life had passed away, and she was telling me her view of this photo thing. What she said was, when he passed away, I spent a day just looking at our pictures, and there is in almost every one of them his eyes looking back at the lens with no soul and no emotion and no thoughts. That gets reported a lot. There is one that I came across, and when I looked at his eyes in that one picture, I can see that even on the bright, sunny, wonderfully warm day walking in the park, I can see where the picture was taken, and the look in his eyes in that picture are pure hate and anger. She's describing it, what should have been a very nice day, and seeing pure hate and anger. And it's the very same hate and anger that I had to endure every day that I was with him. So, yeah, so I don't know how conclusive the pictures are, but I think there's something there worth looking at. Who knows? Everybody's taking pictures of everybody these days, so it shouldn't be too hard to round up some pictures. So we'll close this with, I was thinking about this country songs, and I don't know where I think of these country songs, but they have words about your lying eyes, or my lying eyes, or can your eyes lie to you? To all those things I say yes. So anyway, so that'll wrap up the show for today. Be safe out there, and I'll look forward to chatting with you next week. Goodbye for now.